The first thing I heard was my own name, spoken with a kind of careful restraint that told me the room had already made up its mind. Irene. CEO Samuel Reeves said, "Is this yours?" He slid a single sheet of paper across the conference table. I recognized the formatting before I even recognized the signature. A resignation letter. My resignation letter. I stared at the bottom of the page, at the curve of the first initial, the slow sweep of the last name. It looked like something I would have written on a calm afternoon with a steady hand. Except, I had never written it. Not a line of it. My throat tightened. "This is not mine," I said. But the words felt thin, like they were struggling to cross the space between me and the dozen executives watching from their seats. A board member cleared her throat. Our system logged the submission at 10:43 in the evening through the employee portal. "That is your account, correct?" "It is." I answered, but I was not anywhere near a computer. I was at my sister's birthday dinner on Capitol Hill. My phone was in my coat pocket the entire time. My voice sounded steady, but my hands on the table were cold. Samuel didn't look angry. He looked puzzled, and that scared me more. Irene. This letter moved through 3 internal approvals before it reached my desk. Someone submitted it with your credentials. Another executive leaned forward. "Do you deny sending it?" I pushed the paper gently back toward them. "I deny writing any part of it." Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. It spread through the room like a slow fog. Chairs creaked softly as heads turned, one by one, toward the man sitting 2 seats down from me. Douglas Hale, my manager of 4 years, was already pale. His jaw tightened, and he stared straight ahead as if refusing to acknowledge anyone in the room. His fingers twitched against the folder in front of him. No one said his name. They did not have to. The tension had already shifted, settling squarely on his shoulders while I tried to hold myself steady in my chair. I kept my eyes on the letter, the forged lines, the signature that mimicked my own. I did not know how it had entered the system or how many people had touched it on its way to this table. I only knew one thing as I drew a slow breath and waited for someone to speak again. Someone wanted me out, and they had begun with my name. 48 hours before that boardroom, my life still felt manageable. I walked into Northlake Financial with a stack of audit prep notes under my arm and a throat sore from too many late nights. The upcoming operations audit was the kind of pressure that either crushed people or pushed them upward. For me, it was supposed to be the final step toward the director of operations role. "Morning, Irene," called Mark from accounting. His smile faltered halfway. "You, heading to your office." "Where else would I be heading?" I said, trying to read his expression. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then shook his head. "Never mind. Big week. Bigger than usual." I answered. As I turned the corner toward my team's row, I caught sight of the intern I mentor, Lily, quickly minimizing a screen. Her shoulders jerked like she had been startled. "Everything all right?" I asked. Yes. "Just finishing a task Douglas gave me?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. I frowned. "Since when is he assigning you tasks directly?" She swallowed. "He said you were busy. That was not a word people used for me unless something was wrong. My inbox was already full of messages flagged urgent. Before I could open any, a notification popped up. Access denied, shared drive. Operations, Q4. The same drive I managed every day. I tried again. Same result. "Hey, IT made changes overnight," said Jonas from the next desk. "Maybe your permissions reset." "My permissions never reset," I said quietly. He shifted uncomfortably. "Talk to HR. They might know." HR about a shared drive issue when I reached the hallway outside their office. The HR coordinator glanced up and immediately looked down again as if eye contact might burn her. "Irene. Hi. Sorry, can't talk right now meeting." She rushed past me without waiting for a response. I stood alone in the hallway, clutching my audit notes, listening to the building hum around me. Something in the air felt misaligned, like people were choosing their words too carefully, stepping around me instead of with me. I walked back to my office trying to steady my breath, but the thought stayed lodged in my mind. Why was everyone suddenly acting like I had one foot out the door by mid-morning? I had finally carved out a moment to breathe. I opened my inbox, expecting another wave of audit questions. Instead, the top message made my stomach drop. Your resignation has been received. Please contact HR for next steps. I stared at the words so long my screen dimmed. When I clicked it open, the timestamp read 10:43 in the evening. At that exact time, I had been curled under a blanket on my sister's couch, half asleep after too much cake and too much family noise. My phone had been charging across the room. I whispered, "No, absolutely not." My fingers shook as I logged into the employee portal. A new document sat under my name, a resignation letter. I opened it, and the first sentence punched through me. I am stepping down for personal reasons. That was not my voice. I did not use phrases like that. The tone was soft, almost grateful, like someone trying to leave quietly. Someone had written a version of me that did not exist. I marched straight to HR. The door was open. The coordinator, Julia, was at her desk. "I need to talk to you," I said. She flinched. "Irene, hi." I saw the submission. The system just processed what came through. "I did not submit anything," I said. Julia's eyes darted toward the hallway. "Well, once a document is attached to your profile, it routes automatically. That is how the workflow is designed." "Julia," I said softly, "you know me. Do you really think I would resign out of nowhere?" She swallowed hard. "I am not supposed to comment." "You should. You should probably talk to your manager." The warning was too quiet to be casual. She gathered her papers as if she might flee. I stepped back, gripping the doorknob, feeling heat rise in my chest. A forged letter, a fake timestamp, a system that treated lies as facts the moment they were uploaded. Someone had crawled into my professional identity and rewritten it. Someone had touched my account, and they were willing to go dangerously far to erase me. I did not bother knocking. I stepped into Douglas Hale's office and closed the door behind me. He looked up from his monitor with a smile that stretched too wide, too practiced. "Irene," he said, tone bright enough to sting. "I heard you've had a busy morning. I need to talk to you," I replied. "Now." He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands like he was about to coach me through a minor misunderstanding. "If you're reconsidering your resignation, you should communicate clearly. These transitions go smoother when everyone is aligned." I stared at him. I never resigned. A flicker so fast it almost slipped by crossed his face. He recovered immediately, but the damage was done. "Of course," he said lightly. "Maybe the letter was phrased more formally than you intended. The part about stepping down for personal reasons." My pulse thudded. "You read the letter." He hesitated. "HR briefed me." "No," I said. "HR did not show me the letter until I found it myself." "They did not brief you on the phrasing." His jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to a stack of files. "Anywhere but me." "Irene, let us not turn this into a spectacle. If you changed your mind overnight, just say so." I was not anywhere near a keyboard at 10:43 in the evening. I said, "Someone accessed my profile and submitted that document." He reached for a pen, but his hand shook. "You have always been emotional during audit seasons. Maybe you forgot." "Did you access my account?" I asked. The pen clattered slightly against the desk. "Irene," he said quietly, "I do not appreciate accusations, especially ones based on assumptions." "Answer me." He stood abruptly, smoothing his shirt as if the motion might control the tremor in his voice. "Let us not make this dramatic. You know how these things get. No apology, no denial, no attempt to hide the fear tightening his posture. Something inside me shifted, a clean break I could almost hear. Douglas was not confused, he was frightened, and I needed to understand what he was so terrified of me discovering. I left Douglas's office with the kind of numbness that sharpens every sound. By the time I reached my desk, I already knew I could not wait for anyone else to fix this. I opened my messages, pulled up the photos from my sister's birthday dinner, and saved every timestamp. Then I downloaded my phone's geolocation history, capturing the record that showed I had not left her house once after 9 in the evening. I whispered to myself, "You are going to prove this." My next stop was the compliance wing. I stepped inside and spotted Natalie Park, the analyst I had helped last quarter when she nearly lost an entire vendor reconciliation file. She looked up, surprised. "Irene, you okay?" "No," I said, "but I think you can help me." She closed her laptop slowly. "Tell me what you need." I explained everything quietly, carefully. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her pen. "Show me the document," she said. We stood shoulder to shoulder at her workstation. I pulled up the resignation letter from the portal. Natalie downloaded the file, opened the metadata panel, and inhaled sharply. "This was created on a Northlake device," she said. "Which one?" She scrolled deeper. "Machine ID Hale D Office. That is Douglas's workstation." My pulse thudded once, hard. Natalie clicked again, accessing the user activity logs. "There is more. Your profile was accessed at 10:43 in the evening, not from an external device, from an internal admin gateway. Someone routed through the company network to mimic your login." I felt my throat tighten. "So it was deliberate, very deliberate," she said. "And whoever did it knew exactly which permissions to exploit." I gathered the printed logs she handed me, each page shaking slightly in my grip. Douglas had not just lied. He had built a trap and pushed me toward it with a forged signature and a false timestamp. Natalie lowered her voice. "Irene, he needed you gone. Before the audit hits." I held the stack of evidence to my chest, the weight of it settling in my hands. If he forged my resignation, what else was he hiding that was worth risking everything for? Natalie had not moved from her chair. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen, her fingers flicking through file directories with a speed that told me she was looking for something specific, something she had not mentioned yet. "Irene," she said quietly, "there is another document." My voice tightened. Another resignation. "No." She clicked a folder and opened a second PDF. "This is different." The moment the text appeared, my stomach lurched. The letter was longer, colder, written in a tone meant to sound clinical. Concerns regarding emotional instability. It said, "Multiple incidents of verbal hostility." It accused me of threatening coworkers, undermining leadership, and creating a volatile environment. I felt heat rush to my face. "This is insane. I know," Natalie said, her voice steady but shaken. "This was built to terminate you for cause." I gripped the back of her chair to keep my balance. Why would he make 2 letters? She clicked deeper into the metadata. This one was created 1 hour before the clean resignation. It was saved, but never submitted. My hands went cold. So he had a backup plan. A much harsher one, she murmured. If the quiet exit did not work, he was ready to destroy you publicly. This version would permanently damage your career. I stared at the accusations on the screen, each line a deliberate attempt to rewrite my character. Someone had not just forged a resignation, they had crafted a narrative to erase everything I had built over more than a decade. Natalie turned to me. "He intended to end your reputation, not just your job." I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to steady the sickening churn in my stomach. 1 forged letter was a betrayal. 2 was a strategy. Someone had mapped out multiple versions of my disappearance. Why were they preparing not one, but two different exits for me? I had barely left the compliance wing when my phone rang. The caller ID froze me mid-step. Samuel Reeves, Irene, he said the moment I answered, his voice controlled and clipped. We need to talk about your resignation. Now. I did not resign. I said. There was a pause. Come to the 32nd floor. HR will escort you. The line went dead. Two members of HR were already waiting near the elevators when I stepped out. They did not speak. One gestured for me to follow. I could hear the low murmur of conversations around us, soft, urgent, disappearing the second I looked up. Phones lowered. Eyes shifted away. Every step felt like walking through a story already written about me. As we approached the executive hallway, the air tightened. Douglas Hale stood near the conference room door, a stack of papers clutched to his chest. Sweat dampened the collar of his shirt. When our eyes met, he flinched and looked at the floor. Douglas, I said quietly. He swallowed hard. Irene, this is not the place. I know, I replied. But you put me here. His face pinched as if the words had struck him physically. One of the HR reps opened the conference room door. They are ready for you. Inside, a long table stretched between a line of executives, people whose names I knew from announcements and quarterly reports but had never spoken to directly. Samuel Reeves sat at the center, hands folded, expression unreadable. Irene, he said, have a seat. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. My fingers tightened around the folder holding the evidence Natalie and I had gathered. Douglas slipped in behind me, hovering near the wall, pale enough to blend into it. I exhaled once, steadying my voice before speaking. Would my truth be enough against a manager who had already rewritten my story once Samuel Reeves rested his fingertips on the resignation letter before sliding it toward me? Irene, he said, is this yours? My voice stayed steady. This is not my signature. The room shifted. Chairs rustled. A few executives exchanged glances. I opened my folder and placed the printed logs in front of me. I would like to show you when I was supposedly typing this letter. I said, at 10:43 in the evening, I was at my sister's house. I have photos, timestamps, and a complete geolocation record from my phone. A board member leaned forward. Then how did it go through your account? That is what I wondered. I said, so I asked compliance for help. Samuel looked at the assistant by the door. Bring her in. Natalie entered quietly, holding her tablet like a shield. I reviewed the document metadata, she said. The resignation letter was created on a device registered to Douglas Hale's office workstation. A murmur rippled across the table. Douglas straightened, voice cracking. Hold on. She hinted she was leaving. She told me verbally. I turned to him. I never said anything like that. He lifted his chin. Well, she is making this dramatic. Natalie tapped her screen. That is not all. Her account was accessed through an internal admin gateway. Someone used elevated permissions to mimic her login. I slid a second paper across the table. This is another document we found. One I never saw. Samuel picked it up, scanning the accusations about instability and hostility. His eyes hardened. Douglas, explain this. Douglas's lips parted, but nothing came out. His knuckles whitened against the table. I never submitted that one. But you wrote it. I said. A board member whispered, horrified. This was not a mistake. This was an attack. The room went silent, thick with the realization of how far he had gone. Everything he had built was collapsing in the span of a few breaths. I looked down at the two forged versions of my supposed exit, the fake signatures, the false narratives. What punishment fits a betrayal that nearly cost me my entire life? The investigation began before the meeting even ended. Samuel Reeves excused himself for barely a minute, returned with two members of internal integrity, and gave a quiet directive that changed everything. Douglas Hale is suspended effective immediately. Secure his access. Douglas's face drained of what little color remained. Samuel, you cannot be serious. This is blown out of proportion. Samuel did not raise his voice. You forged official documents. You accessed an employee's account without authorization. There will be no debate. Security arrived before Douglas could gather his papers. He tried to push past them, but one officer gently blocked his path. Sir, we need your badge. I built this department, Douglas whispered, voice cracking. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. By noon the next day, Northlake Financial released a company-wide statement. It did not use my name, but everyone understood who the unnamed employee was and what Douglas had done. The message referenced fabricated documentation, malicious misuse of administrative access, and intentional harm to staff reputation. It was the most transparent communication I had ever seen the company send. People began avoiding Douglas's old office as though something toxic were leaking from it. Those who had once praised him moved quickly to distance themselves. Around mid-afternoon, I watched from my doorway as security escorted him out of the building. His shoulders were slumped, his hands empty. Someone whispered his name, and he flinched as though struck. He looked at me only once, a flicker of something between anger and disbelief passing through his eyes. Then he was gone, swallowed by the elevator. An hour later, Samuel appeared outside my office. The board would like to offer you the director of operations position, he said. You earned it long before this incident. I didn't answer immediately. My hands rested on the folder still holding the evidence I had fought to uncover. A promotion meant power, but not the kind that repaired the truth he had tried to destroy. I will think about it, I said. Samuel nodded. Take your time. When he left, I looked at the empty space in the hallway where Douglas had stood just hours before. Now that he was gone, what did I want for myself? I sat at my kitchen table long after the sun had dropped behind the skyline. The apartment was quiet in a way that made every memory louder: the late nights on audit weeks, the weekend calls, the times I had told myself that loyalty would eventually be seen, eventually be rewarded. I thought about the trust I had placed in Douglas Hale, how I had defended him to people who doubted his leadership, how I had believed he wanted me to succeed. I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank document. No template, no polite phrases written by someone else. I typed slowly, choosing every word with the same care I had used on every project for more than a decade. It was not angry. It was not dramatic. It was simply the truth. When I finished, I printed the page and signed my own name, my real signature, the one that felt steady in my hand, the one no one else could forge. The next morning, I walked into Samuel Reeves's office and placed the letter on his desk. He read the first lines, then looked up sharply. Irene, he said, you do not have to do this. You are valued here. You have every opportunity ahead of you. I know, I said. But staying would mean rebuilding something I no longer recognize. He leaned back, disappointment softening his expression. If you ever reconsider, my door is open. Thank you, I said. Truly. I walked out of his office without hesitation, past the glass walls, past the floor where everything had nearly come undone. No one escorted me. No whispers followed. It felt like stepping out of a story someone else had tried to write for me. That evening, an email arrived from a rival firm. They had read the investigation statement. They wanted to talk. I closed the laptop and stepped outside into the drizzle, letting the rain settle against my skin, breathing in the first moment that truly belonged to me. 3 hours after the CEO's son fired me for disagreeing with his management style, his family's entire airline forgot how to fly. I sat at the bar across from Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, elbows on the counter, my phone propped against an empty glass. The television above the shelves of cheap whiskey echoed what my screen already showed. Northwest Cascade Air had been hit with a system-wide operational failure. The FAA had officially issued a ground stop. The bartender, a guy named Rowan who had seen me stumble in after more than one night shift, leaned over. "Maris, this your airline on the news?" I nodded. "Looks like they are having a rough afternoon." On my flight tracking app, flight after flight turned the same pulsing red. Delayed, pending gate, no crew assigned, unknown status. Rowan let out a low whistle. "Did someone break your system?" "No," I said quietly. I didn't touch a thing after they deactivated my badge. I watched another route collapse on the map. All I did was walk out. The notification banners kept stacking across the top of my phone. Missed calls from numbers I recognized, numbers I avoided for years, numbers tied to people who thought computers ran airplanes and that operations was just a cluster of screens and buttons. A voice on the newscast said the phrase, "unprecedented failure." Another said millions in losses before sunset. Someone else speculated it might be a cyber attack. "It is not a cyber attack," I murmured. "It is exactly what happens when you fire the person who knows which parts of your system are held together by wishes and duct tape." Rowan blinked. "You were really the only one who knew how it all worked." "Not the only one," I said. "Just the one who knew everything they kept ignoring." The red flight icons kept multiplying across the map, one after another, like falling dominoes no one could stop. I wrapped my hand around the sweating glass and breathed out, steady and calm. If the universe wanted to burn down what they refused to maintain, it was not my job to rebuild it. And if you truly want to understand how all of this started, you need to know who I was before the firing back inside the operations center, long before the day Logan Pierce walked in and decided he knew how to run an airline. Most days in the operations control center felt like living inside a heartbeat monitor. No windows, no sunlight, just rows of green screens blinking for attention. The only rhythm anyone trusted was the one I kept steady. I had started at Northwest Cascade Air when I was 21. A junior analyst with a cheap badge and a desk no larger than a cafeteria tray. By 28, I had become the person everyone called when the system even breathed wrong. Maris. Spokane is icing up. Greg, one of the senior dispatchers, called across the room during last winter's storm. His voice carried the urgency of 20 stranded crews and 200 passengers waiting on the ground. "I am on it," I said. "Hands already moving." I rerouted 3 flights, flipped 2 crews, and negotiated a swap with the Portland station chief over the phone. Greg exhaled. "You just saved an entire overnight bank, only because I remember where the old diversion codes live." I said, "Another time, when the rostering server crashed mid-shift." Tyler, the new hire, burst into my cubicle. The screen went black. It says, "No crew on anything." "What do we do?" "Give me a minute." I pulled up my back-end script, the one I wrote on my 5th month here, and triggered a rebuild. Within seconds, the crew list returned. Tyler stared. That was magic." "It's not magic," I said. "It is 20-year-old code that hates everyone but me. People trusted me down here. Pilots Slack-messaged me at odd hours. Ask Maris. Ramp leads called me directly instead of their supervisors. The older ops staff joked that if I ever quit, the whole airline would need therapy. Upstairs, though, I was just the IT girl in ops, a cost center, replaceable, the kind of person executives forgot to thank when the quarter looked good. Only Richard Pierce, the founder, ever saw more. One night, long after shift change, he stopped by my station. "If this airline still flies, it is because people like you keep us out of the headlines," he told me. His voice was tired even then. He was slowing down. Everyone knew he would retire soon. And when he did, the people who disliked hearing the truth would be the ones left touching the controls. The day that happened, I felt the ground shift beneath me in a way I could not ignore. Logan Pierce arrived on a Monday morning, and the air in the operations control center shifted before he even opened his mouth. Word had already spread the founder's son was moving into a real leadership role. Early 30s, Ivy League degree, former consultant, a man who believed every problem could be solved with a slide deck and a confident smile. He announced his presence with a clap. "Team, can I borrow your attention for a second?" Greg leaned toward me. "Here comes the show." Logan motioned for everyone to follow him upstairs. The all-hands town hall took place in the glassy conference room overlooking the ramps outside. Logan stood at the front, sleeves rolled, grin polished. "We are entering a new era at Northwest Cascade Air," he said. "Modernization, innovation, and absolutely no more legacy thinking. A full culture refresh." Someone beside me whispered. "He has been here 2 hours." Logan continued, flipping through slides filled with neon buzzwords, synergy, transformation, frictionless operations. Then his eyes landed on me, just for a second. Something calculating flickered there, then disappeared. After the meeting, his assistant appeared at my desk. "Logan would like a few minutes with you." In his small office, Logan gestured for me to sit. "Maris, everyone keeps telling me we cannot run flight operations without you. That concerns me." "It concerns me too," I replied. "But the real single point of failure is the technical debt built into our core system. Your father's team patched it for years instead of replacing it." His smile tightened. "I do not appreciate people blaming the past. We are focusing on agility now." "I am not blaming," I said evenly. "I am telling you where the risk lives." He leaned back, clearly irritated. "See, this is what I mean. This attitude, resistance, negativity. You need to work on that if you want to fit the direction we are taking." My stomach dropped. He did not want information. He wanted agreement. When I walked out of his office, I could still feel the moment his ego had snapped shut like a door I was no longer allowed to knock on. Logan rolled out his new dashboard the very next week. He stood in the center of the operations control center like a proud parent. "This is going to streamline everything," he said. "We are outsourcing half the help desk to a more cost-effective vendor, and we are cutting down night coverage. Automation can handle most off-peak issues. Most problems happen at 2 in the morning." I said, "That is when the system trips over its own legacy mapping." He gave me a thin smile. "You are catastrophizing again. Let the tools work." I spent the next 2 days writing clear emails, attaching more data, and highlighting every risk the rollout created. Duplicate gate assignments, outdated taxiway maps in the airport files, crew pairings that would break the moment the clock struck midnight. I laid it out calmly, professionally. Logan replied once, "Let us stay positive and align with my management style." In the next meeting, he repeated it aloud. "Maris, you need to trust the tools. This constant negativity is slowing progress." "It is not negativity," I said. "It is accuracy." He waved me off. Same thing. Afterward, someone from HR approached me near the elevators. Paula, a quiet woman who hated delivering bad news, lowered her voice. "Leadership wants people who support Logan's vision. Maybe ease up a little." He mentioned culture fit. "I am trying to keep the place running." I said, "I know," she whispered. "Just be careful." That evening, while Logan's dashboard glowed proudly on the big screen, a routing thread broke. A single glitch one crew assignment looped into nothing. Greg shouted, "Maris! It is happening again." I opened my local terminal, triggered one of my personal scripts, and rebuilt the chain in under 15 minutes. Greg sighed in relief. "You saved us." The next morning, a company-wide email from Logan arrived, proud of our new dashboard resilience and the success of our strategy execution. Not a single mention of what had actually saved the operation. The pre-holiday weekend planning meeting was supposed to be routine. Instead, Logan strode into the room with a grin that said he had already made the decision and only needed an audience to applaud it. "We are pushing the system update live on Friday morning," he announced. "It will show investors that we can scale before the quarter closes." Greg lifted his head. Friday. That is the busiest travel day all year. "It is perfect timing," Logan replied. "High volume proves robustness." I leaned forward. "High volume proves nothing if the core mapping tables are still corrupted. You are prioritizing optics over operational safety. If this goes wrong, we are not talking about a handful of delays. We are talking about a full operational meltdown." Logan's expression tightened. "And there it is again, the negativity." "That is not negativity," I said. "It is a warning." He straightened his sleeves like he was preparing for a photo shoot. This kind of mindset is exactly what does not fit my management style. Maris, either you adapt or you step aside. No one moved. Even the air in the room seemed to freeze. I stood. Not because he won, but because something inside me finally let go. "Then you should run the rollout exactly the way you want." Logan dismissed the room with a satisfied nod. I walked back to my desk in silence. The code I had written over the years blinked back at me. Thousands of lines, patches, workarounds, scripts that held everything together. I did not delete a single thing. That would have been sabotage, and sabotage was not my language. I gathered every personal optimization tool I had created: crew rebuilders, routing stabilizers, mapping sanitizers, and placed them into a single directory tied to my user account. A clear boundary. No tricks. No hidden bombs. Just truth. The core system still ran. Their safety net simply lived where it always had under my credentials. When I hit send on the formal email to compliance, citing the old policy about personal workflow tools belonging to the employee unless formally transferred, I felt something unfamiliar. I felt light. The calendar invite landed in my inbox at 11:45 in the morning. Meeting, Logan and HR, 12 o'clock. No agenda, no explanation. Just the digital equivalent of a folded note slid under a door. When I walked into the HR office, Logan was already seated, legs crossed, posture perfect. Beside him sat Paula from HR with a legal folder resting on the table like a verdict waiting to be read. Logan gestured at the chair. "Maris, thank you for coming." I stayed standing. He cleared his throat. "Over the past several weeks, you have repeatedly disagreed with my management style and resisted the culture we are building. This is no longer a fit." Paula opened the folder and slid a stack of papers toward me. "This outlines your separation package. 2 weeks of severance and a non-disclosure agreement," Logan added. "If you sign today, we can process everything immediately." I looked down at my badge clipped to my belt. The photo was from 7 years earlier, me at 21. Bright-eyed, proud to be part of something I believed mattered, I unclipped the badge slowly, holding it for a moment before placing it on the table between us. "You are firing the one person who actually understands how your flight operations system works," I said, "because she does not fit your management style." Logan's jaw shifted. Attitude like that is exactly the issue. I met his eyes without blinking. "Tell your father I wish him good luck." Paula inhaled sharply, as if the words had weight. "I need your signature," she said gently, tapping the NDA. "I am not signing anything." I pushed the papers back across the table with one finger. "Keep the severance." Logan raised his chin. "This is final." "Maris, it is," I said. I walked out of the building at 12:30, the sun bright, the air sharp against my face. Behind me, the automatic doors closed with a soft hiss, sealing off a chapter I had held together for far too long. By mid-afternoon, I was back at the bar across from the airport. The same stool, the same dull hum of delayed passengers drifting through the walls. Rowan set a glass of water in front of me. "You sticking around a while just watching," I said, pulling up the flight tracking app. Northwest Cascade Air's routes pulsed across the screen, tiny icons moving steadily until, at 3:30, the first one froze. Then another. Then another. Rowan leaned in. That normal no, I said quietly. That is the cache refresh. For years, the system had called my scripts during that refresh. It was instinctive, automatic, a backbone the software depended on without announcing it. But my account had been deactivated at 12:30. The core system still existed, but the stitching that held everything together was gone. My phone buzzed, a text from Greg. Gate assignments are dropping. We lost 2 flights in the roster. Is this the dashboard glitch again? Another buzz. Crew list just doubled a pilot. What the hell is happening? Rowan's eyes followed mine as a cluster of flights turned red on the app. What does red mean, he asked. It means the system is trying to rebuild data that is not there anymore. Messages kept flying in. Pilots are calling in. They have no gates. Routing map mismatched the taxiway in Anchorage. Ops dashboard is showing planes in places they are not. Then, Greg again. Maris, what did you do? I exhaled slowly and typed back. Nothing. I just stopped doing everything for you. Across the bar, the television cut to breaking news. Due to widespread operational inconsistencies, the reporter said, the FAA has issued a ground stop for all Northwest Cascade Air flights. Rowan stared at the screen, then at me. They really forgot how to fly. I watched another route turn red, then placed my phone face down on the counter. My phone lit up so many times it looked like it was vibrating on its own. Unknown numbers, HR, legal. Then, finally, the name I had not seen in months. Richard Pierce. Rowan glanced over. You gonna take that? I let it ring twice, then slid my thumb across the screen. Maris speaking. Richard's voice came through strained, thinner than I remembered. Maris, it is a disaster. The FAA grounded us. We cannot get the system to rebuild. My team says the scripts are missing. We cannot move a single plane. I kept my tone even. I understand. Whatever happened between you and Logan, he went on. I am asking you now as the person who kept this place alive. Please come back. Name your salary. I will meet it. I stared at the condensation slipping down my glass. If I walk back into that system right now, it will look like I engineered the failure. Your attorneys will blame me before they blame the decisions that led to this. You have my word, he said quickly. No one will accuse you of anything. Your word will not stop an investigation, I replied. Once I touch the system again, I become responsible for the wreckage. He swallowed audibly. Then, take more than salary. A new title, stock, authority over Logan, whatever you want. That is not the issue, I said. He waited, breathing shallowly. You let your son fire the one person who could have protected you from his decisions, I said. That is not an operations problem. That is a leadership problem. Maris, please. I felt the weight of everything I had held up for 7 years. The nights, the storms, the invisible work no one upstairs ever understood. I hope you find someone who can rebuild it, I said softly. But it is no longer going to be me. I ended the call and set the phone down, the screen going dark as the noise of the bar settled around me, and for the first time in years, I felt still. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in years. No buzzing phone, no overnight crisis waiting for me. Just quiet. I made a cup of real coffee, the kind I never had time for, and opened my laptop at my kitchen table. My LinkedIn profile still listed my old title. I deleted it and typed former lead operations systems analyst at Northwest Cascade Air. Now, independent aviation systems architect. I hit save. 10 minutes later, the messages started coming in. Recruiters from places I had only ever heard about in passing. Systems leads from airlines in Texas, Florida, Illinois. People asking for my availability, my rates, my interest in consulting. But one message stood out. Sierra Jet Airlines, Vice President of Operations. I clicked it open. Maris, We saw yesterday's meltdown, but we have been hearing your name long before that. Our Seattle crews say you are the one person they trust to understand the real mechanics of flight operations. If you are open to talking, we would like to make an offer before the weekends." Before I could respond, the VP sent a second message, fully remote, Seattle-based, salary more than double what you earned before, and a written guarantee all operations decisions will be made by operations, not by executives without experience. I leaned back, reading those lines again. Not just money, not just a title, respect. I typed my reply. I would need autonomy. If I say a rollout is unsafe, it does not happen until the concerns are fixed. A few minutes passed before his answer came in. Done. I will send the contract within the hour. The document arrived exactly when he said it would. I reviewed it carefully, signed electronically, and returned it. No pleading, no proving, no explaining basic concepts to someone who thought a dashboard was a brain. Just work I knew how to do, for people who actually wanted me there. A few weeks later, the fallout finally hit the news cycle. Every headline was some variation of the same truth. Northwest Cascade Air had been running on undocumented, untransferred personal tools for years, and leadership had ignored repeated internal warnings. One anchor announced it plainly. According to FAA investigators, the airline relied heavily on a single employee's private scripts, despite multiple flagged risks. I sipped my tea on the balcony. Private scripts was a generous way of saying they had depended on me without ever admitting it. Another report followed. The board has removed Chief Strategy Officer Logan Pierce from his position. Sources say the decision was unanimous. Greg texted me that one. He is gone. Board tossed him out in under 10 minutes. The stock collapsed over the next 2 days. Richard retired under pressure, citing health reasons. And then, the announcement everyone saw coming Northwest Cascade Air sold to a national conglomerate at a fire sale price. The irony arrived not long after the conglomerate formed a code-share partnership with Sierra Jet, my new client. Rowan sent me a screenshot of Logan's public statement on LinkedIn. It is time for me to step back and focus on personal growth. It read, 2 lines below it, he promoted a new Leadership Insights blog. I closed the screenshot and opened my laptop instead. Sierra Jet's system blinked awake. Clean, organized, transparent. I was rewriting dispatch logic from the ground up, documenting everything so thoroughly that no single person, least of all me, would ever become the hidden backbone again. My team messaged me constantly, not out of panic, but collaboration. Maris, check this update. Got a question on the routing patch. We appreciate you. A Sierra Jet plane roared overhead, banking south out of Seattle-Tacoma, right on schedule. I smiled to myself. I did not ground their airline. I murmured. I just stopped protecting the people who were already flying it into the ground. Competence had always been expensive. Disrespect had cost them everything. So when a CEO's son fires the only person keeping the planes moving because she does not fit his management style, what did he think would happen when the sky finally cleared? I was nowhere near the storm.